Okay, so with the smoke, Tamiya thinners, because it's Tamiya paint, so we'll put a drop of that in. There's a bit of grey goo left in there, swimming around, which is quite nice. Tamiya smoke, which is X19, which is that oily type colour. Just grab a cocktail stick. That'll do. Okay, we just give that a swizz round. Now what you can do, if you wanted to make this a little bit more dirty, and a little technique, is to actually add a little bit of grey paint to it. And it gives it a little bit of depth, which is quite nice. But this has got to be thin. Air pressure right down. This is 10 psi now, which I'm hoping, when this comes through, will give us a nice dirty line. So what we'll do, we'll start on the bottom, and we're just going to post shade around. So if we bring you in a little bit, you can see what we're doing. Usual thing, we're just going to follow the panel lines, because really, in all honesty, we've lost them slightly through the actual process of putting the bottom paint on a little bit too much. All we're going to do is just going to pop round. We're all happy. Like so, and as I say, we just add these dirty lines in. Just following it around, and just following it all around as we go. As I say, big panel lines, big bits, small, small, so on. Not worrying about around the nose area. Just turns up just a touch. Blow through every now and again to clean through, and just give your needle a quick wipe off. At the moment it's not looking particularly good, but what happens is it should come to life with the wash going over it. Just like that. And this is the main reason I want to do this, is for this bars running down the side. We just want to give them a sort of dirty, warm look to it all. Something like that going around it all. So we'll just do around those patches, but also we're going to colour it in slightly, just going a bit over the top with it, just making a few little passes here, there and everywhere to really just give this, I don't know, a sort of dirty warm look, I suppose, at the end of the day. So there we go, we're just getting in there and just giving it this type of effect. So we just do these top wing panels. Quick job over these because you're not really going to see it, but it'll just give it a little bit of depth. And on the grey, just in the centres and in the greens, we're just going to give it a bit of a spray to give it that sort of dirty look. Around over everything. So there we go, we've got this type of effect going on now. We just bring you out, you might be able to see it a bit better. There we go. So there we go, we've got it looking like this now, as I say, and it just gives it that sort of warm, dirty type look to it all, just like that. So what we can do now, we can get this cleaned up, airbrush up, get the yellow work done as well, and then we can get a couple of coats of Futuron Decal wash, and we're almost done. Okay, so as you can see, we're all masked up underneath for doing this yellow area, so we're just checking our flow coming through. A bit of air in the compressor. So we're going to do very carefully, we're just going to blow in this bottom panel yellow. Now for this I'm just using XF4, just Tamiya's flat yellow. You could use any type of yellow really. Nice straightforward job, just putting that on there like that. And the other way, I've still got it attached to the sprue just to make it easier. Obviously the rudder. And just make sure we're getting all the areas on that. We can let them dry off and we can get them fixed on. Okay, so what I've actually just done is just sprayed up the insides of the doors, the main gear door, everything, the RLM02 colour. And for that I used extra acrylics one again, which is instead of the other one, because I just had them on the go, which is the 1201 colour. So basically what we're going to do now is just pick out the little metal area, and we'll do this by hand, and we're just going to dry brush around in there at the same time. So all we'll do on brush painting, just this metal plate, which is the real one, and all we're doing is literally just taking it up to the lines, and hopefully as it dries all those holes will come through just like so, just like that. Do the same for the other one, and then all we're going to do is just lightly go around and dry brush absolutely everything. So we'll just give this a quick brush over, making sure to get into those holes so it gives it the effect of metal. And then when we've got them open, obviously they'll sit just down here like that. The usual thing with dry brushing, just knocking as much off as you can, and then just a light rub around in there. You can, doesn't matter if you get some too much on the go, because it looks like scratches inside, which is fair enough when you're dealing with something in like this. So that one can have one. A gear door, same thing. And then what will happen is obviously we'll come along with the wash when we're doing the wash stage, and the wash will actually go in there as well, and it will hopefully, with all three together, it will give us that nice type of effect. Just a little bit more to knock most of that off. Okay. Just in there, just like that. And then we'll do these, the gun bay doors, the ones up on the top of the wing. Same thing, just a quick dry brush around, and then I'll do the same for the doors as well, the main ones, which is just a little flick. We'll just give it a little silvery look to it. That will hopefully give it a little bit of depth, so we can go around in. So the next thing we can actually do is those bits are drying, which is a bit we're waiting to do for a while, is actually fix the engine in place. Now, as I say, it should all line up. You've got the little bolts at the back here, just in the real life. They're going to fit into the other ones just down in there, and they're getting the exhaust and everything all into fit in one. It might take a bit of working to wobbling around, but if you test fit first, you should be okay, and it's going to go in and look just like that, and it will give us a nice sort of engine. Then what we can do, we might have to play with the exhaust. The exhausts on this side are absolutely fine, but on the other side they're a little bit wonky, so we'll have to sort them out. Purely for speed here, we just use a little bit of super glue. He says, just looking for his pot of super glue. This is my thick stuff that I have, which is very gluey, but it will stop it running around everywhere. This stuff's like treacle now, but I quite like using it because, as I say, it gets in. So just pick out where the holes are, and what we do, we just run a little bit around everywhere else. A bit spidery. All cobwebs of this coming off. That will sit on there just like that, and then our engine, we can come along and just, as we've just test fitted it, make sure we're the right way up still. In it goes, line up with those holes, and we just hold that in place for a moment just so it's got a firm lock, bit of a grip. But there we go, that's our engine now installed into our aircraft. And as I say, we've got it obviously with the doors open, it should look something like this, which will make us quite a nice impressive little diorama setting. As we could do a base for it. So what I'm going to do now is just pick around, get the gear together, pretty straightforward. Obviously it's just the sides on, oleos on, things like that, put them in and get them into position, and then once we're happy with the engine is nicely in position and the various bits and pieces, we're going to go along and, as I said, we're going to give this 2 coats of Future, let that dry for a couple of hours and get the decaling on. Okay, so we're starting on the decaling here, and here's half I did earlier. So we've got the underside ones on, they're on there like that, and obviously we've got the black area in the tails, the SWAT sticker at the back, the various bits and pieces like that. So it's all going very well. So I'm halfway through. Just save a bit of time really, and save sort of boring you to death watching me do it. Usual thing, I've got just down out of sight just here, I've got a lukewarm water, and what I've actually do is I always give it a couple of drops of Micro Sol, which is the red one, just in there. Microset Industries, they've got the setting solutions. I tend to only use the red one, don't use the blue one very often, you know, which is quite odd because I know a lot of people do it both ways, but I find I don't really need it. As long as you're going over a nice shiny surface, 2 coats of clear down, no problem. So basically in there like that, 20 seconds, sharp scissors, decoupage scissors or decoupage scissors, which are handy, cotton buds for rolling it out, and obviously a brush for putting it on. So we'll just get these crosses on the wing. So if I just line them all up, so what we do, water on first, just like that, and then just making sure we are in the right locations. Crosses go on, and then they'll line up with the panel line that runs down with this particular wing. So they run down to that and then up to the front edge, just like that. Once you're in place and you're happy with it, what I do is literally just roll across the top. Now if you notice anywhere on your model when you're doing your decaling, you come along afterwards just like that, you get your setting solution, generous brush straight over the top. If you notice a few minutes later it's bubbling on the decal and the paintwork, what that is the clear coat wasn't totally dry before it went on. There's nothing to worry about. This is the same thing if you do the wash on too early and it bubbles up. If you just leave it, give it an hour or two, it will disappear and will reset and go on. So don't panic too much if it comes up. I did have a little area pop up a minute ago because I gave this a clear coat about an hour ago before I decaled, come back a little bit too quick and it started to bubble up a little bit, but unfortunately it's gone now. So you don't have to worry about it too much. So I'm going to work my way right the way around the entire thing and decal the entire model. Okay, so we've got bits going on here. Undercarriage we were saying it's just drying, simple. We've got the little oleo with the compression springs sprayed silver and done. What I've also done is I've just gone wrong with a simple little bit of black wash, very thinned out, gone around and washed out all the insides of the actual doors and various bits and locations, and then just dry brushed them back again to bring them up. Also sprayed the wheels, basically they're black, so I've done it with tyre black. Good little tip here, if you're doing wheels and you're flattening them off, when you do this business, sometimes you end up with like a rounded top, and obviously you want to keep them flat. So the way I do it is place the wheel down hard and hold it like that, bring along your standing stick up to the front of it as if you're going to do it, and then move the standing stick and not the wheel. And then that way, you just keep going until you're happy with how it is. You'll end up with a nice flattened off wheel, just like so. And then that way you don't have the rounded off effect and various bits and pieces like that. So that's on. Obviously we can't glue those on into position yet until we know exactly how it's going to stand up and everything else, and then we'll do a drop of super glue with it and do it like that. Engine side, obviously I'm still a bit worried about decals and various bits and pieces. I'm just taking my time with it. A couple of coats of the actual setting solution, the Micro Sol, just to get all the details showing back through again, which they are obviously on the black work down here. And then what we can do now, we can start to bring it together. So what I can do is we can actually fit up this front cowling area. Obviously it drops in first under there, and then it will go in just like that, and that's on. There we go, just like that. And then what we'll do is we'll get this bit attached properly at the moment, because it's going to need a bit of holding in place, because obviously the centre fan isn't exactly square on it, so it needs to just be pulled down a bit. We'll do that with a bit of super glue on there, hold that in, then we can get the guns in. Then we can then have the top, which obviously we're going to have in the open display because we're going to have a few hatches open, but the guns can be fitted and showing with the backup. Same with the side guns as well, the main guns down here, they'll be on there as well. And then obviously these cowl doors, we'll have those open as well, in the nice sort of open position and the bits and pieces. So we're coming together. What I'm going to do then, I'm going to give this a coat of flat, and then I'm going to give it a wash over a coat of flat. And obviously if you haven't used the wash before or you're not up to it, best to go over a gloss coat. So just give it a little bit of a coat of Future, a couple of coats of Future, leave it 24 hours to dry. What I'm going to do in a moment, I'm just going to give it a flat coat everywhere, and that way it'll really tone it down, because we use the dark wash and hopefully it'll just, you know, give it a bit of bite to it, and it'll leave some staining and some various bits and pieces on there, which will give us that nice sort of weathered look. So I'll get this cowl on and the bits and pieces done and a flat coat, and then we can get going with the wash. Okay, so now that future coat has completely dried on it and it's all hard and it's been on there for 24 hours. So next we can get on with a wash. Now what we've got here, I've got the Pro Modelers black, the dark dirt and some brown. So what I'm going to do is for these upper colours where it's quite dark up here anyway, I'm going to use the black, and then for everywhere else I'm going to use the dark underneath, and then I'm going to add a little bit of the mud brown to the underside to give it some sort of, you know, a bit more dirty type of look down there. So if we start with the black first, we just get the black, good old shake in the bottle. Okay, and then we're just going to pop it along the panels on the top, anywhere that's dark in colour, because obviously we want it to show up quite nicely. So we just put this everywhere on top. Just up there like that. Let's pop a bit down the back here. Now it doesn't matter if this overruns, because it will just give us our rough type of thing, but I don't want to go black in the light areas too much because I feel it's going to make it perhaps a little too dark. So we just run around those areas up here, just like that. Now it's quite warm today, so it's not going to take too long to dry. So we've got it on there like that. So we just give the brush a bit of a dizz and some warm water, like that. That's fine. And then we've got the dark dirt. Make sure it's got a good old shake or a stir. Okay, and we'll start on the underside, and then we'll just work this in. Just like so. And just do those panel lines. Now you could stick this in the wheel wells if you wanted to, or anything like that. Personal choice where you go. But certainly, because this is over a flattish coat, I wouldn't say it's a dead flat coat, but it's a flat coat. Hopefully this will be a bit grippy. You can probably hear as I'm brushing it on, it's not very smooth under here, and that's not what I wanted. I wanted it to be quite rough so it grips the wash itself. So if we go down the sides, everywhere around this tail, and just make sure you go absolutely everywhere with it. If not, because you're going over a flat coat, because it will not so much stain, but it's going to get caught up in the pigment, I should say. So we want it to do that. So there we go, we've just got this other side to do. Around, and obviously if it does mix with the black around the joins, don't worry about that. That's all good, that's what we like. So there we go. We're on there everywhere like that. Then obviously at the same time we can do the doors. Got the geared door here because it's got panel lines, and we can do the insides of them as well. Give them a bit of depth everywhere like that. And obviously all these other panels, access panels and doors and things, it's not so much a worry on the inside because we've already given them a wash, but certainly the outsides are going to need it. So these panels that we removed, make sure they get it as well, because obviously it will go in the panel lines, which will just add to a little bit of weathering everywhere on it. And then brown, good old mix, and give it a bit of a rub everywhere to give it a little bit of a brown tinge just underneath the actual model, and it'll give it just a bit more sort of grassy field effect underneath. It's just a little touch really, but I say it just adds a little bit of depth underneath the model. Okay, and we can let that to dry now. Usual thing, it's going to take about 20 minutes to dry. Clean your brush out of just normal warm water and you'll be fine. So we'll let those bits dry off, and then we can get the wash off and start getting it together. Okay, usual thing, wash has been on for about probably 10-15 minutes now, but we're all dry everywhere. We've still got some little bit of moisture up around here. A quick way of doing that, take your airbrush, just air, and you can dry it off, and it dries off pretty quick, so we're not really worried about that. There we go, we're drying already. So we can just do those areas, obviously just down in the grooves where sometimes it tends to stay wet a bit longer. I'd say not rocket science this, usual thing, wet slightly, or you don't even have to wet. If we do this as a dry on the top, obviously it's coming off all okay. But if you wet it some ways you get a better effect because it tends to go in all the little recesses and things all a little bit easier. So as I say, top side we've done with the black, purely because it's a dark surface with the greens and the various things. Now I know some people, they do it where they'll do obviously sort of use black in the green areas and very, you know, it doesn't really, it's not, I don't think it's that important to be that accurate with it. But all we're doing, we're lightly rubbing this away. I want to leave it in the grooves, if you like, and in the texture of the paint. I don't know how well this is going to show it, but obviously getting this dirty effect we've got going on down here. Perhaps you can see it, it looks like a bit like modelling, but it's actually the wash. So if we wet it a bit, obviously we can take it off, you see it comes off, but we want to leave a little bit going in all around there. The nice thing is, obviously, with the decals are good quality on this, it's actually gone in there very nicely, and you can probably see in there with the rivets running along and the various bits and pieces. So we do that, and then obviously on the underside here we just take it off. Obviously we want to get most of it all off down under here, but you can probably hear it's very, very rough, and you can see in this area here, that's actually a moist cloth, but I made it a little bit flatter on the bottom because I wanted it to grip. There again, if you really wet it, we can get it out, we're not that worried. But I wanted it to have a texture, I wanted it to bite, to give it a dirty look without having to go around with pastels and all things like that afterwards. So we just do back and forth motions, and we can get this type of effect going on here, which is quite probably hard for the camera to pick out, but it's just a nice little effect. But you can probably hear it's very, very rough. So I'm going to carry on and get all this wash off all over it, and then we can carry on with the other bits and pieces. Okay, so there we go, that's all the wash off, and as you can see we've got the post shadings working well now with the actual wash all over it. And as I say, I've left it quite grainy and gritty down on the sides to give it that sort of worn in and work look. So really, next thing to go onto that is a flat coat right the way over that, just to sort of blend it all in and keep it all nice. Then we can pop along and put some gun streaks in and various bits and pieces. So we've got to make sure everything's off. So a good example is just down here, I don't know how well you can see, but we've got a little bit of wash left there. You want to get that off to even it all up, because obviously if it's not even, it's going to look a bit odd if you've got it on there. And as I say, once you finish, just go the direction of the airflow. That way, if you have left anything behind, at least it's all going in the same direction. So that one's all done now. The other thing also we've done is put the actual prop together, and we're going to spray that with a little bit of H65, which is the gun's number for the RLM 70. So that's that sort of greeny black colour for doing the prop, and then obviously the prop can go on. So we'll let those bits get going. We're going to give this a flat coat now to totally sort of tone it all down. Same with all the little bits and pieces on there. And what we can do is we can attach things like these engine cover, the gun covers for the back. They can be put in place and shown in the open position like so. And then what we also will do, we'll just tack these in with some super glue, and we can put in these these engine covers, which we've sort of scratch built ourselves, to have them open, so we can have it sort of displayed just like this, and it'll give us a nice little touch like that. So we get those bits done next. Okay, flat coat is all on, as you can see, and the doors are on and nice in position. Gonna have to do a little bit of mounting work for this nose one to get it in there, but they're just super glued and tacked in position, which is quite nice. Obviously now we can see that nice engine detail instead of losing it all. So we're all in there just like that. Now on the underside, as you can see here, I've started on the undercarriage. Now you'll notice they're a nice pinched in look. Now the way to make sure they've lined up is to make sure that the geared door on the outside here, just in here, is against it, because they do pinch slightly in and then obviously they angle down. So if that's right, it will all line up. It's a very nice little way that Hasegawa put this together, because if it's in there right, it fits easy. If it's not, then it's not in there in the correct angle. So as long as it fits in and it's a nice snug fit, it's fine. Then obviously what we've got here, just going on down the back here, we've got a wheel brace. You can probably just see there again, if you're in there okay, it fits, it's perfect, it just sits there. If it's not, there's probably a good reason for it, and time to have a little bit of a fiddle. But it's one of those things where if you have a bit of a play with it, you'll find if it goes in no problem at all, you know you've got it right. If it's being a bit of a pain and it's all over the place and not going exactly how you want it to go, then there's usually a good reason. So if we just fit this side as well, so obviously I'm doing this back to front to sort of show you, so we fit the bottom half in and then in there again. There we go, that's just dropped in straight into place, which is quite a nice one, which is this front one here, because it's lined in and it moved this wheel area slightly to one side. And then I'm actually using liquid cement because I want to weld these in to give it a stronger join as possible. Normally I might go along with a little bit of super glue to do this, but I want these to fix, and once they're in there that they'll never move again. So that's those in, but as I say, if you get it down here, I angle it to you, you can see how they're that sort of pinched in look, and that's what we're after. So what we'll do, we'll leave that just a sec to totally dry off and go hard. In the meantime, I've also sprayed the prop shaft, which there again is a nice little touch because it's just a straightforward slip fit onto the front, or it should be. It did during dry fitting, I can assure you. So that should. He says, wondering why it doesn't go on now. Is there a particular way? There we go. Just goes on the front, just like that. Then what we do a little bit of weathering with this as well. We're going to give it some dry brushing to give it that sort of worn look. But obviously I don't want to put this down on its carriage yet, because otherwise what will happen is it's a little bit soft. As soon as it starts to go hard, and then what we can do is we can get the wheels, put them on, the tail wheel on, liquid cement, sit it down, and then these flat spots will all be in the right place for when it's actually sitting down on the ground. So the final bits we can get on with now, if we just lift gingerly canopy off, we can make sure we haven't got too much or any damage inside, so to speak, and we'll look like we're all okay. We just got to clean up a little bit of tack that's happened back there, and we've got a little bit of overspray going on around here at the back, which isn't a mass problem, because to be honest, you know, with that actual getting a bit of overspray in there, it just allows a little bit of an overlap. So we can do some dry brushing on this back edge, then obviously we'll have the canopy in the open position back a little bit, something like that, and then what we can do is we can build up the canopy frame parts now that have got to go in. So we'll get that bit done now. As I say, I'm a bit worried about putting this leaving it down on this undercarriage because it is quite fiddly. Once that's all done and it's hard, then what we can do is get these inner doors on as well for the undercarriage and put the braces and the other final little bits and pieces in there. You might remember we put a bit of wash in here. It's had a flat coat over the top, which means it leaves a little bit more behind. But if we give it a bit of a rub round, you can probably see there it's actually getting some nice dirty effects in there. And as you see on the bottom there, you can see the chicken heads, which obviously you won't see normally. So it's a nice little view. But as I say, in a moment, what we'll do, when we're totally finished, our final touches, we're going to go around and do a little bit of post shading with it, just to put in some gun streaks back here, and then obviously we can just pop around and do some little oily marks and various bits and pieces like that. So at the moment, we're going to give this half an hour just to sit and dry.